Hey guys, welcome to another video today. Today we are going to talk about, wait a minute, my guy, David. All right? But first, do you know that one of the greatest games of all time happened in a little tiny town in New York? Yeah, New York, Lake Placid. Lake Placid was the home of the 1980 Winter Olympics. This type of Olympic setting was important because it showed that the backdrop from the culture was of that of the Soviet Union and the United States. Well, this is important to know because it set up the greatest game of all time. Thus, in the semifinal round, it was the Soviet powerhouse men's hockey team. Wins every year. Every year. Gold. Every single year. Versus the men's team. Made up of college-age kids. Barely played together for a year, if not less. And that's when it happened. The semifinal round of the medaling. So in U.S., Russia, powerhouse, underdog. And you know what happened, don't you? USA won 4-3. One of the greatest games that Jimmy Craig and Michael Ruzioni ever played. But that wasn't the only underdog story we're going to talk about today. In fact, you can see that underdogs are kind of a theme today. While I would like to talk more about the men's Olympic hockey team, or maybe even talk about the New York Giants versus the New England Patriots, and a major of an upset. But that's not even the best one. We're talking David versus Goliath, the greatest upset of all time. So I think we need to open our Bible and look to this classic underdog story, and let's see why it's so important, and how are we like him? How are we like David? How are we underdogs? Because one, this shows us the most important part, that David has great faith in God. This entire setting, this entire story of the Philistine army versus the Israelites, the Goliath versus what should have been Saul, but became David, and we'll get there. About David's faith in God, this entire thing. But first, let's talk and make sure we understand a little bit about the Philistines, who they were, and King Saul and his Israelites. The Philistines, we get a lot of information from the Bible. They were, as well as a little bit from the monoliths in Egypt too. They were the people who lived in the land of promise when God told the covenant that God made with Abraham, God made with Isaac and Jacob. And they were the people that God told them, you go live. And you will take this land. This land, however, was occupied by the Philistines. These two are natural enemies, opposites in a lot of different areas. With, most notably, this was the Philistines had a polytheistic religion where they worshipped many idols. Many different idols as they worshipped God. However, Israel worships the one, the only God. They didn't see eye to eye. They didn't like each other, let alone that they both wanted the same land, let alone they were polymetrically opposed options. But then we get Saul. Saul, Israel's first king. He was the first. He was tall. Let's keep that in mind. His qualities start there. He was tall, a head taller than what most people did. And as we can see in chapter 15, the setting up right before the David arc comes into the 1 Samuel is that Saul has fallen out of favor with God because Saul no longer puts his faith in God. Instead, he puts it in himself, and also he keeps breaking God's commands, which is sin. And we understand what sin is breaking God's law, and that is what causes us to go to hell. But look at the final piece where we get from the prophet Samuel addressing Saul about his sin, about his disobeyment. In chapter 15, we're going to go a little bit, get a running start at our chapter 17 today. But in chapter 15, starting in verse 26, Samuel said to Saul, I will not return with you, for you have rejected the word of the Lord, and the Lord has rejected you from being king of Israel. And as Saul turned away, Saul seized the skirt of his robe, and it tore. And Samuel said to him, the Lord has torn the kingdom of Israel from you today, and has given it to a neighbor of yours, who's better than you. Oday. Notice how it says that God has rejected Saul as king. Rejected means that he is opposed. He is vehemently reject, you know the word I'm trying to get at, rejects Saul as king. And that's important because Israel then needed a king. That's where David comes in. And as we see, this David in chapter 16, you can read on your own about how David gets anointed as king, as God's chosen. But that summarizes where this battle's at, with the Philistines and Saul and his Israelites. These are unlikely bedfellows. But God is using both, all parties, to get to his point, where that this test of faith, God is using the evil Philistines and the rejected Saul in this test of faith for the country. And you know who comes up aces? David. David. Our guy David. Little guy. But first, let's jump and make sure we understand who we're learning about when we talk about chapter 17. This setting, and there is a champion of the Philistines. One of the main characters. We already know Saul. Let's meet the next one, Goliath. And Goliath is a major test. Look at how they describe him. In chapter 17, starting in verse 4, it says, and there came out from the camp of the Philistines a champion named Goliath of Gath, who was 6 cubits in a span. And he had a helmet of bronze in his head, and he was armed with a coat of mail, and that weights of the coat cost him 5,000 shekels of bronze. He had a bronze armor on his legs, and a javelin of the bronze slung between his shoulders. The shaft of the spear was a weaver's beam. The spear head was 600 shekels of iron, and a shield bearer went before him. Okay, Goliath was a big boy. Goliath was a big, big boy. I'm willing to guess, too, if Saul had his way, he would create an entire army of Goliaths. Tall, large, hulking, just like myself here, men who were beasts of war, who were armed to the teeth with the latest technology. We listed all the greatest marvels of the modern age that they had. Goliath was what Saul wanted, what the Philistines put their trust in, and I'm pretty sure Saul would have too, if he could have. But my faith doesn't come from giants, a 10 feet tall people. No, my faith comes from the Lord, and that is what's important, because that's what these are chosen. So while Goliath is huge, Goliath is a major test of faith. That's not what Saul should step up and fight this man. This test of faith, Saul should take this test, but he doesn't. And then it gets even worse as Goliath challenges the Israelites. Now, we've all had challenges, whether it could be on like the playgrounds, challenges at work that we rise to and easily overcome or try our best at. Listen to this challenge in, let's start in verse 8, where this is Goliath speaking. He stood and shouted to the ranks of Israel, "Why have you come out to draw up for battle? Am I not a Philistine? Are you not servants of Saul? Choose a man for yourself. Let him come down to me. If he's able to fight with me and kill me, then we will be your servants. But if I rebel against him and kill him, then you shall be our servants, and they shall kill us." When Saul, and then verse 11 summarizes it perfectly. When Saul and Israel heard these words, they were dismayed and greatly afraid. They were greatly afraid. This is the people, God's people, the chosen people who stared down the Pharaoh in Egypt, who went after country, a people group, of cities, filled with people, obstacles. And God walked them right through it. Now we have a tall guy shouting threats at them, and they start cowering in fear. No! This is not what it says in Joshua. The angel reminded Joshua, said, "Be strong and courageous. Do not fear." Not be dismayed and greatly afraid. No, come on, guys. That's not at all what they're supposed to do. This challenge, and by the way, it's a daily challenge. Daily, Goliath comes out. Kind of, in my mind, I'm imagining him looking like the bushwhackers. Yeah, for those who get it. Comes out and challenges them. But it only matters to a boy. It only matters that he's defaming God is to this boy. This, not even a soldier, not a man. Because if he were, he would be fighting, defending, representing his father Jesse. But that's not what it is. Look at this challenge that fueled response from David, who just happened to be in camp. Just happened to be in camp and heard it. And from verse 25, and the men of Israel said, "Have you seen this man who comes up? Surely he has come up to defy Israel, and the king will enrich the man who kills him with great riches. He will give him his daughter, and make his father's house free in Israel." David said to the men who stood by him, "What shall be done for the man who kills the Philistines and takes away the reproach from Israel? For who is this uncircumcised Philistine that he should defy the armies of the living God?" And the people answered the same way. "So it should be done to the man who kills him." Saul has no faith in God. So much so that he has to start bribing the people, his soldiers, his men, to find one who's willing. One person who's willing to defend it. And look what he gives him again. The offer is in, the king will enrich the man who kills him with great riches. He will give him his daughter. He's going to become royalty. And his entire father's household tax-free. 3 amazing benefits. Riches, royalty, tax-free. I mean, this is for us, this is not like me saying, you know what, I'm going to take a shot in the dark, going to put the Chicago Bulls to win the NBA championship in 2021. Risk it for the biscuit, right? This is not the same equivalent of just that, but somebody's going to say, well, might as well. The stakes are too high. Even though he is bribing these people, they are still afraid. They have no faith in God, that God would provide for them. Because otherwise, they would have had a champion day one. Saul wouldn't have to start bribing people. And it'd be over. The Philistines would be no more. But instead, we're in countless days later. And he's to start bribing people. And it's not even a soldier that comes and defends God. It's this boy, this shepherd. This shepherd comes, and he is upset as soon as he hears Goliath challenge his God. No one talks about David's God like that. No one should. That's how we should have the response too. No one should have that type of attitude. We should have that type of faith in God where we are giants. That's the giant on the field today, is David's faith. That's the giant. But look at Saul finds somebody who's semi-willing, so he brings him in, gives him the one-on-one, brings him into the principal's office type of interview. And listen to how David responds about if he's ready. Because he's still a boy. Listen to what he says in verse 32. And David said to Saul, "Let no man's heart fail because of him. Your servant will go and fight the Philistine." Oh, he's willing. And Saul said to David, "You're not able to go fight this Philistine to fight with him, for you are but a youth, and he has been a man of war since his youth." Probably that's a realistic complaint. You're a boy. You've been fighting since he's a boy. Experience. Listen how David responds in verse 34. But David said to his servant Saul, "Your servant used to keep sheep for his father. When there came a lion or a bear, he took a lamb from the flock. I went after him and struck him and delivered it out of his mouth. And if he rose against me, I caught him by his beard, struck him and killed him. Your servant has struck down both lions and bears, and this uncircumcised Philistine will be like one of them, for he has defied the armies of the living God." Go for it. You killed bears and lions. You grabbed them by the scruff and fought them to save a lamb? Much respect. Much respect. And that is what the type of faith David had. David is not qualified to fight. David is the ultimate underdog. And you know what? Doesn't matter, because he knows that God will deliver him. He knows that God will deliver him. And Saul does his best to prepare David by preparing him by giving him the best that they have. Let's not forget, Goliath is head to toe in the latest of weaponry of war. David's shepherd, not even a soldier, has no weapons. In 38, it says that Saul clothed David with armor, put a helmet of bronze on his head, gave him a coat of mail. David strapped his sword over his armor, and he tried in vain to go, but he had not tested him. David is prepared. And I always imagine this as David, kind of like when a kid dresses up in their father's clothes, and he's all big and baggy, and he can't move around well. That's kind of what I imagine here. Instead, it says David was so uncomfortable he took them off. And in verse 40 it says, he took his staff in his hand, chose 5 smooth stones from his brook, put them in the shepherd's pouch. His sling was in his hand, and he approached the Philistine. 5 stones, 1 sling. That's all he took. 5 stones. And I like this, because this 5 stones shows David's great faith. Because David's faith was the giant on the field. Not Goliath. David's faith in God was the giant. Because it took 5 stones. He was prepared to not only take out Goliath, but 4 other of the Philistine leaders and take them all down right away. Take out the 5 greatest threats to Israel. Get it done with, get it over with. All he needed was his sling and his faith that God would deliver him. He didn't bring multiple stones, in case I miss. No, he brought multiple stones because he was ready to take down the entire country. He had that much faith in God. It's amazing. That was amazing. And we can see that by looking at this, I want to say eye to eye, but it's kind of like eye to knee. When they meet face to face, and they kind of do that little trash talk thing where to each other, and they, But look at I'm going to start at 45, but listen to verse 46. Let's get a little running start. Then David said to the Philistines, "You come at me with a sword and a spear and with a javelin. I come at you in the name of the Lord of hosts, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied. This day the Lord will deliver you into my hands, and I will strike you down and cut off your head. And I will give the dead bodies of the hosts of the Philistines this day to the birds of the air and the beasts of the earth, that all the earth may know that there is a God in Israel." This, friends, is David. His great faith in God. He comes up to Goliath, knowing that God is in control of all things, knowing that God is with him, that his faith in God will provide for him, just like it did for Israel throughout the entirety of our Old Testament, as we can read each and every step, that God's people were with him. While Goliath has the latest and best, the greatest javelin, spears, shield bearers, weapons, armor. Goliath has the best. But you know what? It was a 2-on-1 fight, because it was David and God, the Lord of hosts, versus Goliath. And you know what? That's not fair. It's not even going to be close. God and David. Goliath. Not even close. And the confidence, David wasn't just prepared, like I said earlier, with these 5 stones. He wasn't just prepared to go, if I miss, I'm going to try again, and I'm going to kill you, Goliath. I have 5 shots. No. He keeps going on. Then he said that not only he's going to kill him, the Goliath, and take his head off, but he's going to go after the Philistine army and let the beasts of the air and the beasts of the earth and the birds of the air come and feast on their corpses. Oh, dang. That is the greatness of David in his victory in this. In that, that's exactly what it is. He then just simply reached into his pouch, got his sling going, right in the forehead. Dead. 1 shot, few minutes, over. And then it says that he reached out and cut off his head. And in verse 50, it summarizes the battle simply of David prevailed over the Philistines with a sling and a stone. I know, we all want a long narrative, don't we? We want a battle sequence, we want descriptions, then he moved to the left, and then he flanked, and then he did all those battle things. We do. This is direct, short. Kind of like how The Hobbit describes the battle of the 5 armies. Poof, and then it's over. It's not much of a description, but there wasn't much to describe. David took his stone, slung his stone, and killed Goliath. One swing, that's it. And then it says he reached over, just like he promised, took the sword out of Goliath's belt, cut his head off, ending it. The story of David and Goliath is wonderful, because we said it's the ultimate David is the greatest underdog. He is a giant, though, when we look at his faith in God. But it kind of reminds me of Captain America. I like the movie The Avengers Endgame, because we had this wonderful battle where it's just Captain America beaten, broken, everyone and everything gone, versus Thanos, his entire army, entire armada, just standing there ready to go until the end. David is a lot like that, because he's an example of faith to us. David is ready and willing to do anything God asked him to, because God has everything under control. David knew that no matter what happened, he won, he lost, God was with him, and it was important that he followed God's will. Because that's not what Saul did. If you want to read through that, that would be chapter 15 and before. David has Goliath-sized faith, giant-sized faith in God. No matter what the odds, no matter what it looks like. Our boy David believed that God is bigger than itself. And that should be the attitude that we have in our life. Job loss, health, sickness, pandemic, politics, schoolwork, relationships with anybody. That's the type of faith we need to have in God. That no matter what the problem is, God is greater still. Be David this week. Be David in our lives as we are up against a lot of evil in the world. But God is greater than it still. All right, guys. Be good. See you next week.